I need you to understand something before I tell you the rest. I'm not crazy. I'm not some backwoods hermit who sees monsters in every shadow. For 37 years, I taught high school biology in Asheville before I retired to my grandfather's property in the Pisgah National Forest. I know the difference between a black bear and something else. I know what lives in these mountains. Or I thought I did. My name is Russell Caldwell, and for 40 years, I maintained what I believed was a peaceful coexistence with a creature that shouldn't exist. The locals around here have stories. They always have. The Cherokee called them Solkalu, the slant-eyed giant. Growing up, I'd heard the tales from old-timers at the general store in Hot Springs, how loggers in the 20s had abandoned entire camps after finding their equipment destroyed and inhuman tracks circling the bunkhouses. Tourist trap nonsense, I'd always thought. The kind of folklore that kept the gift shops in business. Then, in January 1984, I found the tracks. I'd been living on the property for 3 months, restoring my grandfather's cabin after his death. The snow had fallen heavy that week, 16 inches, that turned the forest into a cathedral of white silence. I was checking the woodshed when I saw them. Footprints crossing my back 40, each one 18 inches long and 8 inches wide, pressed deep into the snow. 5 toes clearly visible. The stride measured over 6 feet between prints. The biology teacher in me wanted to rationalize. A hoax, someone on snowshoes. But the tracks went straight up a 60-degree slope without deviation, and the impressions showed dermal ridges I could photograph. Whatever made them weighed at least 500 pounds and walked on 2 legs. 3 nights later, I heard it for the first time. Not a howl, that's what people always say, but it's not accurate. This was a vocalization that started low, almost below hearing, then rose to a scream that made my windows vibrate. My dog Sawyer, a coonhound who'd treed bears without flinching, crawled under my bed and wouldn't come out. I started leaving venison scraps near the tree line. Not as bait. I told myself I was just curious. By February, the scraps were gone each morning, and I'd find more tracks. By March, I rebuilt my grandfather's old tobacco drying shed at the edge of the property, reinforcing it, adding ventilation. I told myself I was just maintaining family history. But I knew what I was doing. The first time I saw it clearly was April of that year. 10 feet tall if it was an inch, shoulders as wide as a refrigerator. Hair covered everything except the face. That face, caught in my spotlight, simultaneously human and utterly alien. Eyes that reflected yellow-green, watching me with an intelligence that made my throat close. It stood at the edge of the clearing for maybe 15 seconds. Then it turned and melted into the forest without a sound despite its massive bulk. I called it Old Jack, after my grandfather. Stupid, sentimental. I kept leaving food. In the harsh winters, I'd stock the shed with deer carcasses from roadkill I collected. I convinced myself I was protecting something rare, something science didn't understand. For 40 years, this arrangement continued. Old Jack would come, take what I left, and disappear back into the deep forest. Sometimes I'd find gifts, arrange stacks of stones, deer antlers positioned at my property line. Territorial markers I understand now. Warnings. I never told anyone. Who would believe me? The one time I mentioned the tracks to a forest ranger, he laughed and asked if I'd been watching too much Finding Bigfoot. So I kept silent and maintained my strange détente with whatever lived in those mountains. That changed when my daughter called 2 weeks ago. Paige had been distant since her mother and I divorced 15 years back. She blamed me for choosing this isolated property over keeping the family together in Asheville, but her voice on the phone held a forced brightness that immediately put me on alert. She and her husband Derek wanted to visit for the holidays. "Mend some fences," she said. They were bringing a friend too, Dr. Lucia Santos, a primatologist from Duke who was apparently doing research on wildlife behavior in the southern Appalachians. I should have said no. The weather report predicted a major winter storm system moving in, but the hope of reconciliation overrode my better judgment. They arrived on December 18th, four-wheel drive straining up my mountain road. Paige looked older than her 38 years, stress lines around her eyes. Derek was the outdoorsy type, immediately appreciative of the property's isolation. "Man, you really are off the grid out here," he said, surveying the forest that pressed close on all sides. "Cell service?" "Landline only. Always has been." Dr. Santos emerged last, a compact woman in her 40s with sharp, observant eyes. She was polite enough, but I caught her studying the tree line with more than casual interest. "Your daughter mentioned you have wildlife activity on the property." "Black bears mostly. Deer, the usual." Her expression suggested she'd expected a different answer. That night, I heard the wood knocks. 3 sharp reports echoing from the ridgeline, each one distinct, deliberate. Old Jack announcing his presence. I'd heard them countless times over 4 decades. It had become almost comforting, like a familiar neighbor's routine. But Dr. Santos sat up straight at the dinner table. "Did you hear that?" "Just trees falling," I said automatically. "Ice-breaking branches." She didn't look convinced. Derek and Paige seemed oblivious, but Santos excused herself and stepped onto the porch. Through the window, I watched her scan the darkness with a small thermal imaging device she pulled from her pocket. When she came back inside, her face was pale. "Mr. Caldwell, how long have you known there was a Sasquatch? On your property?" The word hung in the air. Paige laughed nervously. "Come on, Lucia, you don't actually..." "There's a heat signature out there that doesn't match any known animal in this region. Bipedal, approximately 9 feet tall, stationary among the trees about 200 yards from your house." She turned to me, and her eyes were afraid. "And it's not alone. I'm reading at least 4 distinct signatures, Mr. Caldwell. There are multiple individuals in those woods, and they're positioned around your property in what looks very much like a perimeter." The temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees. In 40 years, I'd only ever seen one. Only ever fed one. "That's impossible," I whispered. Then we heard it. A scream from the forest that split the night. Not one voice. Multiple voices, calling and responding in a chorus of rage that made Paige clutch Derek's arm. They weren't howls. They were communication. The shed I'd maintained for 40 years stood dark and empty at the tree line. I'd stocked it 3 days ago with fresh deer carcasses, preparing for old Jack's winter visits. The door was torn completely off its hinges. Not opened. Torn free and thrown 30 feet into the clearing. Through the window, in the moonlight on the snow, I could see what they'd left instead. Not a gift, not a territorial marker. Arranged in front of the shed were bones. Human bones, partially cleaned, laid out in a pattern. Rib cages, femurs, skulls, at least 6 of them, judging by the shapes. Dr. Santos was already on my landline, but her face told me everything. "The lines are dead. No dial tone." The wood knocks started again, closer now. All around us, a rhythm of communication boxing us in. "Dad?" Paige's voice was small, childlike. "What did you do?" I stared at those bones in the snow and understood with cold, absolute certainty. I hadn't been protecting a rare creature. I hadn't been in a peaceful arrangement with a gentle giant. For 40 years, I'd been feeding a family of apex predators. I'd provided them shelter, kept them fed through harsh winters, given them a reason to stay in this territory. I'd wondered why old Jack never left, why he always returned. Now I knew. This was their hunting ground. This had always been their hunting ground, and I'd just invited my daughter into it. The forest had gone silent in a way that was worse than the screaming. Derek was the first to recover, his wilderness training kicking in. "We need to secure the cabin. Windows, doors, anything they could..." "Secure it against what?" Paige's voice pitched high. "Those bones out there, Dad. What the hell are those bones?" I couldn't speak. 40 years of carefully maintained denial was crumbling. Every gift left at my property line, every careful boundary old Jack had maintained. The way he'd never approached the cabin directly, never threatened me. I thought it was respect, even affection. I'd been livestock, a reliable food source that was too useful to kill. Dr. Santos moved with clinical precision, pulling equipment from her bag. I need to document this. The thermal signatures, the bone arrangement, the vocalizations. Document? Derek stared at her. We need to get the hell out of here. The road is 4 miles down the mountain through forest. Santos held up her thermal device, showing us the screen. Multiple heat blooms surrounded the cabin in a rough semicircle, largest to the north where the densest tree cover provided approach routes. They're intelligent enough to coordinate. Look at the positioning. They've cut off the most obvious escape route. This isn't real, Paige said. She'd pressed herself against the far wall, as if 8 more feet from the windows would make a difference. Bigfoot isn't real. This is some kind of... Your father knows it's real. Santos turned to me, her fear giving way to scientific fervor and anger. How long, Mr. Caldwell? How long have you been feeding them? 1. My voice came out raw. I've only ever seen one. The same one for 40 years. You thought you'd domesticated a Sasquatch? She gave a bitter laugh. These are not apes that can be tamed. The behavioral research, the sighting reports that get dismissed, they all point to something that's been hunting humans for thousands of years. Why do you think indigenous peoples had so many warnings about them? Why do you think hikers disappear in wilderness areas at rates that don't add up? She pulled out a laptop, flipping through files with shaking hands. I've been tracking disappearances in this region for 3 years. 17 people vanished from the Pisgah National Forest between 2010 and 2023. 12 were experienced hikers. Search and rescue found nothing. No bodies, no clothes, no equipment. Authorities call it getting lost, exposure, falling into ravines. She gestured toward the window, toward those bones gleaming in the moonlight. But you've been feeding what took them. You've been keeping them here. The accusation hit like a physical blow. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know. Derek had moved to the gun cabinet in the corner. You have weapons? Shotgun, rifle. I use them for... Get them, now. I retrieved my Remington 870 and my Winchester 30-06, hands trembling, not from fear of the creatures outside, from the horrifying realization of what I'd done. Every winter for 4 decades, leaving food in that shed, making sure they stayed close. How many hikers had wandered through what I'd turned into a private hunting preserve? How many families had filed missing persons reports while I put out roadkill and told myself I was doing something noble? Santos had pulled out a directional microphone, aiming it toward the forest. They're vocalizing below normal human hearing range. Infrasound. That feeling of dread, nausea, that's physiological. They use it to hunt. Through the window, I could see the shed clearly. Not just bones now. In the snow around it, tracks crisscrossed in patterns that suggested movement by multiple individuals. Some of the prints were massive, 18, maybe 20 inches. Others were smaller, juveniles, a family group. I'd been feeding a family group. There, Santos pointed at her thermal display. The largest signature is moving, coming closer. We watched the heat bloom on her screen shift, separate from the trees, advance toward the clearing. Through the window, I saw it emerge from the shadows. Old Jack. But he wasn't alone anymore, and seeing him among his kind revealed the horrible truth of what he was. 10 feet tall, shoulders massive with muscle visible beneath the dark hair covering his body. His face turned toward the cabin, toward me, and even at 100 yards, I could see the intelligence in those eyes. Recognition. not the grateful acknowledgement of a wild creature receiving help. Assessment. The cold evaluation of a predator watching its food supply. Behind him, others emerged. A female nearly as large, her body leaner but no less powerful. 2 juveniles, 8 feet tall already, moving with the coordination of experienced hunters. And 3 more adults, spreading out to flank the cabin at precise intervals. 7 of them. Santos was whispering into a digital recorder, her voice clinical despite her fear. Multiple individuals demonstrating coordinated hunting behavior. Tool use evident in shed door removal. Bipedal locomotion. Estimated height range 7 to 10 feet. Clear evidence of social structure. Wood knocks erupted from 3 directions simultaneously, sharp reports that made us all flinch. Not communication. A signal. The largest juvenile bent down, picked up a rock the size of a bowling ball, and hurled it at the cabin. It hit the wall beside the window with enough force to shake the entire structure. Derek yanked Paige away from the glass as a second rock shattered the kitchen window, spraying fragments across the room. "They're testing our defenses," Santos said, "seeing if we'll run or fight." "Dad," Paige grabbed my arm. "That thing knows you. I saw how it looked at you." She was right. Old Jack stood in the clearing, his attention fixed on the cabin, on me. His mouth opened, and the sound that emerged was nothing like the distant howls I'd grown accustomed to over the years. This was deliberate, modulated, almost words. "Russell." My name. It said my name. Oh, Jesus. Derek raised the shotgun with shaking hands. Oh, Jesus Christ. "Mimicry," Santos whispered. "They can mimic human speech," the reports mentioned. Another rock, this one striking the door hard enough to crack the frame. Then silence again. The creatures had stopped moving. All 7 stood motionless at the edge of the clearing, watching the cabin. Waiting. "They want us to run," Santos said. "Chase behavior. If we flee into the forest, they'll hunt us down one by one." "Then we stay here," Derek said. "Wait for daylight. Wait for someone to notice. We're in trouble. No one knows we're here," Paige said. "We told everyone we'd be off-grid for the holidays. No cell service, remember? No way to call for help." I moved to the window, staring at old Jack. For 40 years, I'd left food. For 40 years, I'd maintained that shed, kept these mountains safe for them, kept them fed enough that they didn't need to hunt elsewhere. I'd enabled this. I'd made this possible. The bones in the snow weren't just proof of their kills. They were a message, a claim. This was their territory, maintained by their arrangement with me. And now that arrangement was changing. Old Jack's mouth opened again. Not my name this time. A long, rising howl that the others took up in chorus. The sound built, layered, creating harmonic frequencies that made my bones ache and my vision blur. When it ended, the silence pressed down like a weight. Then movement at the tree line. Shapes I hadn't noticed before, partially obscured by shadows and the peculiar ability they had to remain motionless. Not 7 creatures. 12. Possibly more. Santos's thermal device showed the truth, heat signatures dotting the forest around us. They'd been there all along, hidden, patient, watching my cabin for who knew how long, studying our routines, our defenses, our vulnerabilities. "They've been planning this," she whispered, "waiting for the right moment, waiting for you to give them prey." The largest juvenile moved forward, more confident now. It bent down again, but this time didn't throw the rock. Instead, it began striking it against another rock, creating rhythmic knocks. One of the others joined in, then another. A dozen of them now, all making that sound. The coordination. Perfect. They were communicating, coordinating, and we had nowhere to run. Derek checked the ammunition. 12 shells for the shotgun, 20 rounds for the rifle. Not enough, he said simply. Through the broken window, snow began to fall again. Heavy flakes that would cover tracks, eliminate evidence, hide bodies, as if the forest itself was complicit in what was about to happen. Old Jack took a step forward, then another. Testing. I raised the rifle, aimed at the creature I'd fed for 40 years, and realized with cold certainty that even if I pulled the trigger, even if I killed him, the others would come. They were family. They protected their own. I'd fed them for 40 years. Now, finally, they were going to feed. The wood knocking stopped at 3:47 a.m. I know because I'd been staring at the clock on the wall, watching each minute crawl past while those creatures maintained their positions around the cabin. The silence was somehow worse than the noise. "Something's changed," Santos whispered. She hadn't put down her thermal device in 6 hours, tracking each heat signature, documenting their movements with obsessive precision. They're repositioning. 3 signatures moving to the south side, 2 heading toward... The crash came from the back of the cabin, the sound of wood splintering. Not the door, the wall itself. Derek spun, shotgun raised, as a section of the rear wall buckled inward. Through the gap, I could see something massive pushing, testing the structure's strength. "They're trying to break in," Paige said, stating the obvious because our minds couldn't quite process what was happening. "The walls are log construction," I said. 6-inch diameter spruce, notched and chinked. They can't just... Another impact, harder. A log cracked with a sound like a gunshot. Enormous hands. Christ, those hands. Appeared in the gap, fingers as thick as broom handles, gripping, pulling. The creature was trying to pry apart logs that had stood for 80 years. Derek fired. The shotgun blast in the enclosed space was deafening, and I saw the hands jerk back, heard a roar of pain and rage from outside. But when Santos aimed her thermal at the gap, the signature was still there, moving away but not dead, not even badly injured. "Buckshot won't stop them," she said. "The reports from the few armed encounters I've documented, it takes a fatal hit to bring them down. Center mass, headshots, and their bone density, muscle mass. It's significantly greater than apes. I don't need a biology lesson." Derek was reloading with shaking hands. "I need to know how to kill them." A roar from outside, and suddenly they were all screaming, that layered howling we'd heard before but amplified, furious. We'd hurt one of them. We'd made them angry. The front door exploded inward. Not from ramming, they'd simply ripped it off the hinges with brute strength. Old Jack stood in the doorway, massive form silhouetted against the snow, mouth open in a scream that showed teeth designed for tearing meat. I fired the Winchester. The .30-06 round caught him in the shoulder, spinning him partially around. He roared again, but he didn't go down. Instead, he lunged into the cabin with terrifying speed, one long arm sweeping across the room, scattering furniture like it was made of paper. Derek fired the shotgun point blank into Old Jack's chest. The creature staggered, blood darkening the hair across his torso, but those massive hands were already closing on Derek's shoulders. I heard bones break, a wet, cracking sound that I'll never forget, and Derek screamed as Old Jack lifted him off the ground like a child lifting a doll. "No!" Paige lurched forward and I grabbed her, pulled her back as Old Jack turned toward the door. Derek was still screaming, struggling, his legs kicking uselessly as the creature carried him outside. "Derek!" Paige fought me, trying to reach him. "Derek, please, Dad, do something!" Santos fired the shotgun I'd given her, but Old Jack was already gone, disappearing into the forest with my son-in-law. Derek's screams echoed back to us, growing more distant, then cutting off abruptly into silence that was worse than any sound. For maybe 10 seconds, none of us moved. Blood pooled on the floor where Old Jack had stood. We'd hit him, wounded him, but not enough. Not nearly enough. Then the others came. They poured through the doorway, 2 of them, moving with terrifying coordination. The female and one of the juveniles. Santos fired, striking the juvenile in the leg. It stumbled, howling, but the female didn't hesitate. She crossed the room in 2 massive strides, backhanding Santos with enough force to send her flying into the wall. I heard the crack of her skull hitting the logs, saw her crumple. I fired the Winchester at the female, hit her in the chest. She flinched, staggered, but kept coming. Paige had grabbed Derek's shotgun, fired wildly, missed. The female's hand closed on her arm, and I heard my daughter scream as she was dragged toward the door. Something broke in me then. Some barrier between thought and action. I dropped the rifle, grabbed a burning log from the fireplace, and swung it into the female's face. The heat, the flames, made her recoil with a shriek. Her hand released Paige, and she stumbled backward, the hair on her face smoldering. "Run!" I shoved Paige toward the back of the cabin, toward the bedroom. "The storm cellar! Go!" The juvenile was back on its feet, limping but advancing. I grabbed the rifle, fired from the hip, and this time I saw the impact strike its head. The back of its skull exploded in a spray of blood and brain matter, and it dropped instantly, convulsing. I'd killed one of them. The female's scream changed pitch, became something beyond rage. Grief, I realized with horror. That juvenile had been hers, and I'd just killed her child. She came at me in a blur of motion. I got the rifle up, but she batted it aside, those massive hands closing on my throat. Her face filled my vision, so human, so utterly inhuman, and her eyes held an intelligence and fury that made me understand. This wasn't just hunting. This was personal now. The shotgun blast took her in the side of the head, spraying bone fragments and blood across the wall. She dropped, her weight pulling me down with her, those hands still locked on my throat even in death. Paige stood behind her, shotgun smoking, her face spattered with blood. She'd made a headshot from 15 feet, and she was shaking so badly she could barely stand. "The cellar," I gasped, prying those dead fingers from my throat. "Now." Santos wasn't moving. The impact with the wall had cracked her skull. I could see bone through her hair, blood pooling beneath her head. I checked for a pulse. Found nothing. 2 dead. Derek taken. Santos dead. Just me and Paige left. From outside came howling that dwarfed anything we'd heard before. The pack had found their dead juveniles, found their dead female. We'd killed 3 of them, wounded at least 1 more. They weren't going to just kill us now. They were going to make us suffer for it. I grabbed ammunition, grabbed supplies, and pulled Paige toward the bedroom. The storm cellar entrance was hidden under the bed, a holdover from my grandfather's moonshining days, a bolt hole in case the revenuers came calling. We'd just reached the bedroom when the entire front of the cabin exploded inward. Not broken, demolished, as if a truck had driven through it. Multiple creatures poured into the space we'd just vacated, their roars shaking dust from the rafters. I shoved Paige into the cellar, followed her down, and pulled the trapdoor closed behind us. Above, I could hear them tearing the cabin apart, systematically destroying it. Searching. In the darkness of the cellar, Paige was sobbing. "Derek. Oh God, Derek." I held her, my hands still shaking from the adrenaline, from the horror of what we'd done, what had been done to us. For 40 years, I'd maintained my peaceful arrangement with monsters. For 40 years, I'd told myself I was protecting something precious. I'd been protecting killers, feeding them, enabling them. And now they were going to make me pay for every single meal I'd ever left them. Above us, something massive walked across the floor, stopped. I could hear breathing through the boards, hear it scenting the air. Old Jack's voice, that horrible mimicry. "Russell." He knew where we were. They all did. They were just deciding how to dig us out. The cellar had been built into bedrock, a space 8 feet by 12 with stone walls and a floor my grandfather had lined with slate. There was one entrance, the trapdoor we'd come through, and no other way out. My grandfather had designed it to hide moonshine and revenue from federal agents, never imagining his descendant would use it to hide from creatures that shouldn't exist. We'd been down here for 6 hours. 6 hours of listening to them tear the cabin apart above us, their howls and grunts and that horrible mimicked speech echoing down through the boards. Paige hadn't spoken since we'd closed the trapdoor. She sat in the corner, knees pulled to her chest, Derek's blood still on her clothes. Shock, I knew. Her mind was protecting itself by shutting down. I couldn't afford that luxury. I was conducting inventory by the light of my emergency lantern. The Winchester with 14 rounds left, the shotgun with 8 shells, 2 bottles of water, and a first aid kit. No food, no radio, no way to call for help. The scratching started at dawn. Not digging, exploring. Something was running its fingers along the trapdoor seams, testing, learning. Then it stopped and I heard footsteps moving away. They were patient. That was the worst part. They weren't acting like animals driven by instinct. They were thinking, planning, adapting to our resistance. Around noon we heard it, distant at first, then closer. A helicopter. Search and rescue maybe. Someone who'd noticed we were overdue, who'd come looking. Hope flared in my chest. I grabbed the trapdoor handle, ready to risk opening it, ready to signal. No. Paige's voice was hoarse from crying. Don't. She was right. The sound was already fading, the helicopter moving away. They hadn't seen the cabin, or if they had, they'd seen nothing unusual. Just an isolated mountain property, buried in snow. When the helicopter was gone, the howling started again. Not rage this time. Triumph. They'd known about the helicopter. They'd stayed hidden until it passed. Night fell, and that's when they tried fire. Smoke started seeping through the floorboards, acrid and thick. They'd set the cabin on fire, trying to smoke us out like bees from a hive. I could hear the crackle of flames, feel heat beginning to build in the stone walls. "We have to move," I said. "If the cabin collapses, we'll be buried." "Move where?" Paige's laugh was broken. "The second we open that door, they'll—" "I know." We waited while the fire grew, while the temperature climbed, while smoke filled our lungs and made us cough. The choice was simple: suffocate or face them. I chambered around in the Winchester. "When I open this door, I'm going to shoot anything that moves. You follow me out. Stay close to the walls where they can't surround us. We make for the truck." "Your truck is 4 decades old, Dad. It probably won't even start in this cold." "It's our only chance." The heat was becoming unbearable. Soon the floorboards would catch, and then we'd have minutes at best. I positioned myself beneath the trapdoor, counted to 3, and pushed it open. The bedroom was an inferno. The roof had partially collapsed, exposing the night sky. Flames climbed the walls, consuming everything. And standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the fire, was old Jack. I fired before thinking. The round caught him in the chest and he staggered backward. I fired again and again, driving him back into the main room. Paige scrambled up behind me and we ran for the front of the cabin, or what was left of it. The female's body was gone. So was the juvenile I'd killed. They'd taken their dead, but they'd left Santos. Her body lay where she'd fallen, now partially consumed by fire. We burst through the destroyed front wall into the snow. The cold air hit like a physical blow after the heat of the cabin, and for a moment I couldn't breathe, couldn't see through the smoke and snow and darkness. Then they came. 2 adults hit us from the right, moving with that terrifying speed they possessed. I managed to get the rifle up, fired point blank into one's face. It went down, screaming, and I grabbed Paige, pulled her toward where I'd parked the truck. But they'd already been there. My 1982 Ford F-150 sat on flattened tires, the hood torn open, the engine gutted. They'd known. They'd known that if we ran, we'd try to use it. Plan B, I gasped, and we ran for the forest. It was suicide. I knew that even as we plunged between the trees, we were running into their territory, their hunting ground, the place they knew better than any human ever could. But staying at the burning cabin meant certain death. The forest at night was a maze of shadows and snow-covered branches. We made it perhaps 200 yards before I heard them behind us. Not roaring, not howling, just the sound of massive bodies moving through the undergrowth, closing distance with casual ease. We weren't escaping. We were being herded. I realized it when we stumbled into a small clearing and found ourselves surrounded. They'd positioned themselves in a circle, using the terrain to box us in. 7 of them. No, 8 now. More had arrived while we'd been trapped in the cellar. Old Jack stepped forward. I'd shot him at least twice, maybe 3 times, and he was still moving, still upright. Blood matted the hair on his chest and shoulder, but those wounds had barely slowed him. He raised one massive hand and pointed at me. Not a gesture of threat. Something else. Recognition, acknowledgement, condemnation. For 40 years, I'd fed them. For 40 years, they'd tolerated me because I was useful, but I'd killed 3 of their family. I'd hurt old Jack himself. The arrangement was over. He vocalized something, not English, not anything human, but the others responded, spreading out, tightening the circle. They were going to kill us slowly, I realized. Make us suffer as we'd made them suffer. Dad, Paige whispered. I'm sorry I blamed you. For the divorce, for the isolation, for everything. I understand why you stayed up here now. No, I said. You don't. I stayed because I thought I'd found something special, something worth protecting. I raised the rifle, knowing it was futile, but unwilling to go down without fighting. But all I did was feed monsters. Old Jack tilted his head, and for just a moment, I could have sworn he understood. Could have sworn there was something like agreement in those eyes. Then he charged. I fired 3 rounds, saw them all hit, saw him falter but keep coming. His hand struck my chest with enough force to crack ribs, sending me flying backward into a tree. The rifle fell from my hands and I tasted blood. Paige screamed and ran, not away but at him. She'd picked up a fallen branch, swinging it with desperate fury at a creature 10 times her size. Old Jack almost seemed amused, letting her strike him once, twice, before casually swatting her aside. She hit the ground hard and didn't move. Paige! I tried to stand, fell, my chest screaming with agony. Paige, get up! Old Jack stood over her, looking down. Then he looked at me. His hand reached down, closed on her jacket, and he lifted her limp form. No, please, take me instead. But he turned away, carrying my daughter into the forest. The others followed, melting into shadows, leaving me bleeding in the snow. I don't know how long I lay there, long enough for the cabin fire to die down to embers, long enough for my blood to freeze to my clothes, long enough to understand that this was intentional. They'd left me alive, alone, to think about what I'd done. When I finally managed to stand, dawn was breaking. The forest was silent, except for wind in the trees. I stumbled back toward what remained of the cabin, searching for anything I could use, any way to track them. That's when I found the trail. Not subtle. They'd wanted me to find it. Massive footprints leading north into the deepest part of the forest. And beside them, smaller prints. Human. Running, stumbling. Paige was still alive. I followed, knowing it was exactly what they wanted me to do. The tracks led me 3 miles into wilderness that grew progressively more hostile. Ancient hemlocks blocked out the sun, creating twilight even at midday. The undergrowth was dense with rhododendron thickets that grabbed at my clothes and skin. This was old forest, never logged, never touched by human hands except as hunting ground. I found the first marker 2 hours in, a tree twisted and broken at 8 feet up, branches arranged in a specific pattern. Territorial marking, a deliberate sign that I'd entered their domain. Every breath sent fire through my broken ribs. The rifle had 3 rounds left. I had no food, no water except what I could eat from snow, and no realistic hope of survival. But I kept walking because Paige was somewhere ahead, and I was the reason she was here. I was the reason for all of this. The second marker was a pile of stones arranged in a cairn, topped with a deer skull. The bones around the base were human. I recognized a femur, vertebrae. How old they were, I couldn't tell. Years, maybe decades. Evidence of countless kills, countless victims who'd wandered into these mountains and never left. All of them killed by creatures I'd kept fed and healthy for 40 years. The third marker stopped me cold. It was Derek. They'd positioned his body in a sitting position against a tree, arms spread like a crucifixion. His chest had been opened, ribs spread wide, organs removed with what looked like surgical precision. But his face was untouched, eyes still open, frozen in an expression of absolute terror. This wasn't random. They'd left him here for me to find. A message, a promise of what was coming. I threw up in the snow, my body convulsing, ribs screaming. When I could breathe again, I closed Derek's eyes and kept moving. The tracks led to a ravine, steep-sided and narrow, the bottom obscured by shadows. I started down, using trees to control my descent, and that's when I smelled it. That overwhelming musk, rotting meat and old sweat and something wild that made my hindbrain scream warnings. The cave entrance was partially hidden by fallen logs and brush, deliberately camouflaged. Inside, I could see darkness and hear something breathing. "Paige?" My voice cracked. "Paige, are you there?" Movement in the shadows. Then she emerged, stumbling, her face bruised and swollen. Behind her, blocking the cave entrance, was old Jack. "Dad," she sobbed. "Dad, I'm sorry, they made me." "It's okay." I raised the rifle, aimed at old Jack's head. 3 rounds. One had to work. "Come toward me slowly." She took a step, and old Jack vocalized something, that low, rumbling sound that seemed to vibrate through the ground. Paige froze. "He won't let me leave," she whispered. "Dad, there are others inside the cave. Females, young ones. This is where they live." I understood then why they'd led me here. Not to kill Paige, not yet. To show me, to make me understand the full scope of what I'd enabled. This family, this clan, had been living here for who knew how long, and I'd provided them with a steady food supply that had let them thrive. "How many?" I asked. 12 that I've seen, maybe more deeper in." Her voice was hollow with shock. "There are bones, Dad. Piles of bones. Some of them still have clothes, identification. One had a park ranger uniform. The 17 disappearances Dr. Santos had tracked. Here was the answer. Here was the evidence that would prove everything. Except no one would ever know, because I was never leaving this forest. Old Jack took a step forward, and I fired. The round caught him in the shoulder, his already wounded shoulder, and this time I saw real pain in his reaction. He staggered, roared, and I used that moment. "Run!" I grabbed Paige and pulled her past him, up the ravine slope, my ruined ribs grinding with every movement. Behind us, the howling started, not just old Jack, but all of them, emerging from the cave in a wave of fury. We couldn't outrun them. I knew that. But maybe I could give Paige a chance. The ravine narrowed ahead, choked with deadfall and boulders. A bottleneck. I positioned myself there, rifle raised, while Paige climbed past. Dad, no. Keep going. Follow the ravine north. You'll hit the Blue Ridge Parkway in maybe 5 miles. Flag down a car, any car. Tell them everything. I'm not leaving you. You're not. I'm staying. I chambered the second to last round. This is my fault, Paige. All of it. Let me make it right. Old Jack appeared around the bend, massive form barely fitting between the ravine walls. Behind him, others. Too many to count. I fired. Hit him in the chest. Saw him stumble but not fall. 1 round left. I'm sorry, I told him. Not because I thought he'd understand English, but because I needed to say it. I didn't know. I was trying to protect you. His mouth opened, blood bubbling from his chest wound. Russell. Then he charged, and I fired my last round point blank into his open mouth. The back of his skull exploded, and his massive body crashed into me, carrying us both down into the ravine in a tumble of flesh and stone and snow. I felt my spine crack on impact. Felt old Jack's weight crush my legs. Felt warm blood, his or mine, I couldn't tell, pooling beneath me. Above, I could hear Paige screaming my name. Then running footsteps, fading. She was getting away. The other creatures surrounded me, looking down. One of them, the largest of the remaining males, picked up a boulder the size of a microwave, raised it above his head. I closed my eyes. Impact was surprisingly quick. I didn't die that day. I wish I had. The rangers found me 4 days later, hypothermic and delirious at the base of the ravine. Paige had made it to the parkway, flagged down a car, led them back. By the time they reached me, infection had set in. They airlifted me to Mission Hospital in Asheville, where I spent 6 weeks in intensive care. My back was broken in 3 places. My left leg was crushed beyond repair. They amputated below the knee. I had internal bleeding, punctured lungs, and brain swelling that left me unable to speak coherently for the first month. But I was alive. Paige testified to everything she'd seen. Derek's body had been recovered, exactly where I'd found it. The cave was located, photographed, documented. 17 sets of human remains were excavated from inside, including the park ranger Santos had mentioned. DNA testing confirmed their identities matched missing persons reports dating back 15 years. And they found the creature's remains too. Old Jack's body was at the bottom of the ravine where we'd fallen. The female and juvenile I'd killed were in the cabin ruins. Forensic analysis confirmed they were unknown primates, bipedal, showing characteristics inconsistent with any known species. For 3 weeks, it was the biggest story in the country. Proof of Bigfoot. Proof that cryptids were real, that they'd been hunting humans for decades. News crews swarmed the area. Scientists descended on the cave. The Forest Service closed off 30 square miles of the Pisgah National Forest. Then it all stopped. The bodies disappeared from the morgue where they were being studied. Federal agents confiscated all video evidence, all photographs, all physical samples. The scientists who'd examined the remains were required to sign non-disclosure agreements or face prosecution. News coverage shifted to hoax narratives and explanations of elaborate costumes and mass hysteria. Within a month, the official story was that a family of black bears had been responsible for the deaths, that Derek, Santos, and the others had died from animal attacks misidentified by traumatized witnesses, that the Bigfoot bodies had been fabricated props used by a reality TV production company filming in the area. I spent 3 months in physical rehabilitation, learning to walk on a prosthetic leg, learning to manage the chronic pain in my spine. Paige visited twice, then stopped coming. She couldn't look at me without seeing Derek's death, seeing the truth of what I'd done. The divorce was finalized 6 months after the incident. She took back her maiden name, moved to Portland, cuts all contact. I don't blame her. The property was seized by the federal government under eminent domain, declared a protected research area closed to public access. My grandfather's cabin had burned completely, and they demolished what remained. Every trace of my 40-year habitation was erased. I live in Asheville now, in a one-bedroom apartment that smells like old carpet and loneliness. I haven't been in a forest since. Can't even look at trees without seeing shapes between them, hearing wood knocks in the distance. Dr. Santos's research was confiscated, her computer files wiped, her office cleaned out. But she'd been smart. She'd backed everything up to a cloud service using a fake account. Before she died, she'd given me the password during those 6 hours we were trapped together. I've spent the last year reviewing her files. The patterns are there if you know what to look for. Disappearances in wilderness areas across the entire Appalachian Range, stretching from Georgia to Maine. Hundreds of cases over decades. Experienced hikers, hunters, campers, all vanished without a trace. Search and rescue finding nothing. Official explanations that don't add up. And in every cluster of disappearances, there's someone like me, someone living near the forest, reporting strange sounds and tracks, someone feeding wildlife, maintaining sheds or cabins in isolated areas, someone unknowingly maintaining territory for these creatures, keeping them fed enough that they can breed, expand, hunt. I've identified 47 possible sites. 47 people who might be making my mistake right now, thinking they're protecting something rare and special while they're actually enabling serial killers. I've tried to warn them. Anonymous emails, letters, phone calls. Most ignore me. Those who don't call me crazy tell me I'm suffering from PTSD, that I need help. They're not wrong about the PTSD. I sleep maybe 3 hours a night when the medication is strong enough. Even then, I dream of old Jack's face, of Derek's open chest, of bones arranged in the snow. I wake up screaming more nights than not. My therapist says I need to forgive myself, that I couldn't have known what I was doing. But that's a lie. I'm a biologist. I knew that apex predators protect their territory, that they hunt, that they kill. I just chose to believe these predators were different because believing that made me feel special. Santos had tracked 17 disappearances in my area alone. 17 people dead because I fed their killers. How many across the entire Appalachian Range? How many because people like me provided shelter and food? The federal government knows. I'm certain of that now. They've known for decades, maybe longer. They've been covering it up, erasing evidence, silencing witnesses. Whether it's to prevent panic or to protect the creatures themselves, I can't say. But the pattern is clear. These things exist. They're intelligent, they hunt in coordinated family groups, and they've learned to use humans like me as a food source. We're livestock to them, carefully managed prey animals that they keep alive only as long as we're useful. I'm writing this because I need someone to know the truth. The government will probably erase this too, classify it, make sure it never sees daylight. But maybe someone will read it before they do. Maybe someone will understand what I'm trying to say. If you live near wilderness areas, if you've ever found tracks you can't explain or heard sounds that don't match any known animal, don't investigate. Don't feed whatever made them. Don't try to help or protect them. Run. Get as far from the forest as you can and never look back. Because if you do what I did, if you maintain that arrangement for years or decades thinking you're doing something good, eventually you'll realize the truth. You're not a protector or a friend or a guardian of something precious. You're a farmer. And one day, your livestock will realize they don't need you anymore. That's when they'll remind you what you really are. Prey.